vegan for 35 years, since 1980, and even from the very beginning, when I first went vegan in 1980, I was already an activist at that point. I was teaching, right after I was teaching college classes, and I was making sure that my students, I would show them videos of what happens on factory farms, or having them read Peter Singer's Animal Liberation when it first came out, and discussing these issues in philosophy classes. And I found in the last 35 years a couple of things. Number one, we have this wonderful momentum that's building. More and more people are awakening to understand the consequences of violence towards animals, and also that as people begin to make these connections, that we're creating a foundation for enormously positive social change that will ripple out and bless everyone on every level. That we can all be a part of this, and there's no greater movement to be part of than this, because this goes to the real roots of our dilemmas. So, the basic idea, first of all, is that since all of us yearn to live lives of meaning and purpose, then we know that, as it said over the temple at Delphi, it said Gnathi Sutan, which means know thyself. So we know, I think, at a deep level, that we do have, as much as we can, an obligation to try to understand ourselves through whatever that is, through meditation, through contemplation, through self-inquiry, through study, through questioning. Who are we? What are we exactly? To really try to come to terms with that, because we're only on this planet for a few decades. I think it's really important to remember we're just here for a short time. And so while we're here, our life is precious. It's transient. We don't know when we're going to leave. It could be tomorrow. Could be, we don't know. So to do the best we can while we're here, to understand ourselves, and what else? To perhaps understand, grow in wisdom, grow in compassion, grow in love, grow in our capacity to be a force for healing, for joy for others and for ourselves, right? For creativity. I think we have these kinds of yearnings at a deep level, and these are natural and healthy. This is part of our natural wisdom and our true nature. But we have to understand that being born into a society that's based at its living core on imprisoning and mutilating animals and then feeding them, even having us eat that, right? I mean, we got to let that sink in. What we're doing. I mean, it's bad. It would be bad enough if we were killing 75 million animals every day and throwing them into some big pit somewhere. But we don't stop there. We actually then feed it to our children. We eat the flesh of these tortured animals ourselves, and the secretions from these animals that are just absolutely concentrate huge amounts of toxins, both physical toxins like PCBs and dioxins and heavy metals and radioactive waste and pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, chemical fertilizer. I mean, all this stuff concentrates in animal flesh, and especially in dairy products and eggs. And so we not only eat that stuff, but we actually promote it. I mean, we actually think, yeah, well, I mean, tastes good. and the thing to understand, I guess, underlying all of this, is that when we leave here, right, and we go out and we see people, taking out their wallets and paying for meat, dairy products, and eggs, and actually buying that and eating it or giving it to their children, that there's only one reason anyone does that. And the one reason is that we do it because of our communities, the communities that we're born into, right? This is community-driven behavior. This is not something anyone thinks up on their own. No one wakes up in the morning with this idea to have the mammary secretions of a bovine animal and try it out and no one ever think of that in a million years. But we do it because we're raised in communities where we're forced to participate in that. If we don't, they'll say, well, you're going to die of a calcium deficiency or something. So it's important to understand that the only reason anyone does this is because we're following orders that came to us from extremely influential people like our mothers and fathers and our ministers and teachers and government officials and corporations and Ronald McDonald himself, right? I mean, the ones that really have a lot of credibility, like Ronald. So as little kids, I guess maybe he does. So this is the idea that we have been forced to live in a society where we've been wounded very, very deeply early on by being forced to eat the flesh of tortured animals, and that does damage that is quite difficult to undo, really. I mean, to heal that, to question that. So that's the reason when, for most of us, if we make an effort to understand these ideas and we actually move our life so that we become, say, vegetarians, or beyond that, we become vegans, and we're living in this way, so we're not buying meat, dairy products, or eggs, or wool, or silk, or leather, or down, or fur, or products tested on animals, as best we can, not going to the rodeo and the zoo and SeaWorld and all that. That whole thing of just minimizing our violence towards animals, to me, that's an enormous victory, really, for human consciousness, to rise out of a culture based on hurting animals, which is, founded upon its very living core, dominating and exploiting animals. So if we are able to question that to the degree that we get out of that, then we want to share that idea, right? We want to say, okay, wow, this is great. I'm not dead yet. I haven't died of a protein deficiency, and I actually feel better. Most people feel a lot better moving to a healthy plant-based diet. And so then we try sharing this idea with our friends and family, and they listen to what we're saying, and how do they respond? Do they say, wow, gosh, that's fantastic. You're really reducing the amount of violence towards animals, and you're helping hungry people because there's more grain to feed everybody, and you're being a force for improving our economy and for reducing the amount of violence to the environment. That's great. I'm going to follow your lead and go vegan too. Thanks. Is that what they usually say? Or they kind of mumble and bumble and fumble and oh gosh, now I don't know what to do around you anymore. Where are you going to get your protein? There's this program that's injected into us against our will. So when a vegan comes along and kind of shows another way of living, the program, not the person in a way is not a person. A person is just a program. And we're injected with this program to eat meat and dairy against our will from the time we're little infants. You can see it if you just go to any grocery store and look at the little jars of veal and turkey and beef and chicken. That's what we're forced to eat. So when someone like a vegan comes along, we're an immediate threat, in a sense, to that program. And so there's no way to respond except to either change the subject, get angry, or shut down. It's just... there's no argument. I mean, you can't really argue because it's not necessary to eat animal food. This has been well understood. So we're doing something that is devastating on every level, and it's unjustifiable. So and 98% of people are doing it, so that's the reason. There's this strength in numbers, basically. So the whole idea really for us as vegans is to understand that we are an extremely important resource on this planet right now. I don't want to put too much pressure on everybody if you're vegans, but really, if you haven't read the book, you say. But anyway, in the last chapter, I write this. I'll just say this briefly. If in any crime committed publicly, there's always three roles that are enacted. There's the role of the victim, someone who's getting attacked or raped or mugged or whatever. There's the role of the perpetrator, someone who's attacking them or harming them. And then there's the role of the third person, since it's public, of the bystander, someone who's watching this. Well, in the case we have today on this planet, we have literally millions, actually billions of victims, right? The animals who are being horribly abused, confined, and killed for meat, dairy products, and eggs. We also have millions, actually billions also, of perpetrators, the people who take out their wallets, pay someone somewhere to stab animals and mutilate them and kill them, and so they can eat them. So we have billions of perpetrators and of victims locked in many ways in an absolutely untenable situation. And the perpetrators themselves really are victims. The only reason that the perpetrators, this is an old saying, hurt people, right? Anyone who's been abused will tend to abuse others. And so we, as being raised, forced to eat meat, we will then abuse animals because we've been abused. And so we do that, but it's all sort of shut down, and we don't understand it. We just do it. And so we're locked in this death embrace, horrible violence between humans and animals that is destroying everything. It's destroying our environment, our society, our health. And the only ones that have any power to stop this, as it is in any public crime, right? The victim is hoping that the bystander will step in and break it up, just say, "Hi, I'm calling the police," or just scare the person off, or get them to change their mind. So as vegans, we are just we're only 2% of the people. We're the bystanders. We're the only ones who can actually heal the situation that is essentially being enacted. So it's very important for us, I think, to wherever we are in our life, to move toward not only understanding what veganism is as an expression of the highest ideals of all spiritual traditions and of the awakened mind, a perfect expression of the awakened mind in the sense of perfect veganism is love for all living beings. It's the utter understanding that all life is interconnected, and living our lives out of that as an expression of joy, freedom, love, caring, kindness, mercy, compassion, and so forth. And then to understand that we can always become more skillful, actually, in our expression of these qualities. So even if we go vegan and we think, okay, now I'm vegan, so I'm perfect, leave me alone, I don't have anything more to do, I'm just a vegan now, so I'm better than most everybody else who's not a vegan, we should really be careful of that attitude, because first of all, we're not any better than anyone. We simply, in a sense, we've just come home to our true nature. And it's nothing to be proud of. It's this, we've returned to our true home, and now we see beings when we see beings, rather than seeing things when we see beings. So to come home to our true nature, but then to work to continue to cultivate ahimsa, or nonviolence, in all of our relations with other human beings. Because other human beings are also animals, right? So we have to treat all animals with respect and kindness. That means animals and non-human animals and human animals. And so this is the glorious, to me, really glorious pathway that we have, all of us as human beings, that we can be grateful for, that we're born on a planet in a critical time where there's this massive violence going on between these two animals, human animals and other animals, this domination and exploitation, and we have somehow managed to awaken out of that, and we are part of a movement of deep healing, and we can contribute to this at this precious time, and we can contribute our capacities, right? Our creativity, our intelligence, our caring, our energy. And what more important thing is there to do than to come to some faraway planet in some far-off corner of the galaxy and universe, wherever, and help out in some way for the brief time that we're here. And so I think the whole idea is to make an effort to question the programming, not only in the society outside of us, but what we've internalized, the tendency we have, even as vegans, to be judgmental or to blame people or shame people or to compete with each other. We really are called to purify our consciousness to be worthy of the trust, I think in many ways, that animals have in us, that we will be able to be effective in our advocacy. And so that means embodying what veganism is in a more and more authentic level, so that we're actually living what we're talking about. And that's where I think it really gets interesting. So when